Oh my gosh. Here I am, excited once again, guys. We got the episode for you. This is Marci Nettles, and I am your host for the Your Blank What Now podcast. And we are so thankful that you've come back to join us again. Our guest today is just going to be such a joy and such a blessing for you. And the information that he's going to share is going to be so relevant for many as they are going through a certain time in life where things seem to transition. You go from being in one position and then all of a sudden you find yourself in another. So I am excited to be able to introduce to you today Noah Gabriel Press McIntyre. He is amazing, guys. He is an internationally known gratitude coach, speaker, course creator, poet, and founder of the Discover Gratitude movement. He has been a practitioner of grateful living and mindfulness for over 35 years and holds a master's in arts and social science with a concentration in gratitude and transformative learning from Antioch University. His book of poetry, in honor of the life of his father, Jeffrey Robert McIntyre, is called Awakened by Whispering Love and is being released in 2021. That's this year, Noah. His upcoming course, Our Gratitude Ourselves, is being created with his mother, Miriam Hawley, one of the original co-authors and founders of Our Bodies, Ourselves. This course empowers fabulous feminist women to leave their legacy of love as they discover a deep sense of gratitude for themselves. So I am so excited to be able to welcome Noah to this episode of the Your Blank What Now podcast. And actually, the title of his episode is You're Caring for Your Parents with Parkinson's Disease. What now? That is so huge, Noah. And by the way, I just think that you are just an amazing human being. You have done so much in your gratitude endeavors in helping people understand the power of gratitude. And I know that you have had, a really amazing life, really. And it started as a child. Can you share with us what your childhood was like and maybe even the relationship that you had with your parents?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Marci. It's
Welcome.
such a joy to be with you, and the depth of connection that we've had the chance to tap into over the last few months after having known about each other for a few years. It's really an honor to be with you. Thank you for creating this safe and public space for us
Yes.
to share our journeys and provide hope and healing and transformation to ourselves and other people. It means a lot to me. I want you to imagine I'm 2 years old and I'm sitting on my dad's lap with my bottle. I think he was giving me some like apple juice at the time. And it's maybe 5:30 in the morning. And he's chanting. We're sitting on meditation cushions and he's chanting and chanting and chanting Tibetan meditation chants that he raised me with. Now, he himself had grown up in the Methodist Church, and his father was a minister and pastor, and he chose in the middle of seminary to convert to Buddhism. And he felt like this was his calling. And so when I was growing up, he would do his chanting because I would get up early in the morning and he was doing his prayers and meditation. And so I grew up with Tibetan practices and being exposed to that. And then, as a 4-year-old, I would crawl around the space. And, in the Tibetan Buddhist traditions, they use tools for meditation that have different representations. So I'd ask him, what's this and what's that, different sacred objects. And around this time, maybe when I was 6 or 7, my mom, who was rediscovering her Jewish roots at the time, also said, I want us to learn how to do meditation as a family. So as a 6, 7-year-old, my mom and I went and studied with a great meditation teacher named Thich Nhat Hanh, who is one of the world's best known meditation masters. And Thich Nhat Hanh was the leader who brought the conversation of mindfulness that you see everywhere now. He was one of the main people that brought that to our country. And so I studied with Thich Nhat Hanh when I was 6 and 7, and we finally learned to have a prayer and meditation practice together as a family. And as I grew up, we were always looking for ways that we could bring our Christian roots and our Jewish roots into a sacred practice, which included the Buddhist faith and traditions. And so I grew up in this family where exploring different religious and spiritual traditions and faiths was explored, and learning to develop a relationship with God, with Jesus, with Buddha, with a lot of these important teachers and teachings was something that was always encouraged in my childhood. And it was a space of learning, of healing. My father, had a lot of challenges in his family that he used his faith and his prayer and his meditation practice to heal. My mother kind of got back in touch with her spirituality and her Jewish roots after being raised in a very social family with Jewish roots, but not very spiritual, a lot of spiritual practices necessarily. So by the time I'm 13, I'm having what many people would consider to be a bar mitzvah, but I called it a Buddha mitzvah because we integrated Buddhist meditation and reading from the Torah together.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And there was always a shared focus on faith, prayer, meditation. Learning how to practice that together was probably one of the most important foundations, no matter what was going on in the family, that the three of us had a shared practice and were able to share our spirituality, prayer, devotion, and faith together. That's really, really important part of my childhood.
Wow, that's amazing. And it sounds like, just thinking about all of that, trying to combine it together, having three different people. So you're three individuals, and then bringing the different practices together. That would take a lot of respect too.
Yeah, it took a lot of respect. It took a lot of respect from my parents to their parents, because my mom's parents are Jewish. My grandfather, mom's dad, was much more raised in a much more practicing Jewish household. Grandmother was much more social. My dad's father and mother were two of the main leaders in their Methodist church. So the emphasis on community, faith was always there. And there was a kind of sense of healing and learning and kind of transformative processes through lots of healing and prayer and meditation and therapy, and that my parents went through to create their own spiritual practices that were similar but very different than what they were raised with. At the same time, they're raising me saying, we want to introduce you to these things, but we don't want to force anything on you. So we're going to talk to you about a lot of different world religions and spiritual faiths and see what you want to learn more about together. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That I love that, because what just keeps coming to me is it's just love. It's just love. It's like you're loving each other enough to be able to explore these things and to not have anything come in between your relationship as a family, your relationship as child to parents, or the relationship of the parents to the child. So that sounds amazing, and definitely not the norm.
Yeah, definitely not the norm. I mean, it wasn't like they didn't raise me and have to discipline me, and we had our share of family, tensions and arguments. But the thing is that the way we figured out our common ground was we would sit and meditate and pray together to find a solution or to figure out what the answer was. And by the time that I was going into high school, we decided to help actually start a Buddhist family meditation retreat with a Lama, Sotra Malioni. She's one of the first Western American women to become like a full Tibetan nun, and then Lama. Lama Sotramalioni is one of the leading kind of divine feminine teachers in the West right now. And that was a way that we studied with her, as well as a Cherokee medicine woman and a Lakota chief who came together to provide, again, a multi-faith, multi-disciplined family, religious, spiritual retreat where the parents could learn how to meditate and pray. The young people and the young adults could go and practice on a vision quest there, have a real rites of passage and coming into their own. This was at the heart and soul of the love and the faith and the resilience that would come to be deeply tested in the years ahead.
That kind of leads me into a question. It's like, so were you guys always close? Were you always close with your parents, or was there those deep tests in your young adulthood and into your early, 20s? What was that like?
We did have the gift of friendship, which is not something that all families have. There was we liked being together. And I think that if you think about middle school or high school, when the teenager goes off and rebels, that some of that kind of stuff happened for me later in my 20s, it was later, but through the middle school and high school years, we were actually praying and meditating together on a regular basis. So it was one of the things that really kept us together. And the three of us always wanted to do it. There was something God-given, there was some kind of spiritual motivation that was coming through us, where we were all happened to be naturally interested and wanting to do this. My mom would often take me to temple or to the meditation retreats or to church. And she would say, do you want to be here or do you want to go play? And I genuinely wanted to sit and pray with her. There was just something in me that compelled me towards that practice. It didn't mean I didn't play and have friends as a kid, but there was just a part of me that was always, it was like a God-given desire to just learn about these things. And that is unique. It's very unique. And I'm not saying that other people don't have it, but when you see a 6 or 7-year-old saying, Mom, let me stay in temple and not go to, Hebrew school, it was just interesting. Like, I haven't reflected on this in a while, but I appreciate you giving me the chance to do that, because it's a unique kind of experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And yet it sets such an amazing foundation to your relationship, right? Based off of love and respect and honoring each other and enjoying, that time and putting that time together as being a priority as well. I think that really kind of sets you guys up for the later years experiences that you would be able to have. I would say it's actually an opportunity that you have had, as your topic for this episode. The title is that you're caring for your parents. You cared for your father before he passed away, and now you're caring for your mother, and both of them with Parkinson's disease. It's like, can you share with us and, let the audience know, it's like, when did you first come about this diagnosis? When did you learn of the diagnosis with your parents? And what was this like for you? How did it make you feel when you learned what your parents were faced with, and ultimately what you were faced with?
Right. I think I want to establish two things that I think will help give a bigger way of framing or understanding or thinking through this process with us as you and I talk about it.
Perfect.
Marci. So one is, after all of our practices, and that includes life coaching and transformative personal development seminars at an organization called Landmark Education, which is a whole world of ontological thinking about how we be together, how we show up as human beings. It's non-religious. So the thinking about how do you respond in the face of challenges was deeply part of our family's practice as I went into my teens and 20s. It's important to acknowledge that tradition,
Yes.
that way of looking at things from more of like a life coaching perspective. So I never used the word disease. It was always dis-ease. So there
Yes.
may have been, and a lot of people who like study Louise Hay, like she's someone who brought this whole conversation about not disease, but dis-ease. So where is ease missing and where can it be put in place? Like to look at it from that kind of a little bit out of the box for some people. Some other people might say, oh yeah, dis-ease, where ease is missing. So I never thought about it as a disease. There was lots of people in our kind of more traditional medical model that want to have everything be explained by a diagnosis, which can be helpful at times. There is if you're willing to be empowered to derive power from the meaning that you create in response to whatever happens to you. I know I just said a lot just there, but if you're willing to say, I'm responsible for being the author of my experience, that's a lot of what I learned at Landmark from the traditions of Werner Erhard and that whole school of thinking about how do you be responsible.
Mm-hmm.
So when we received the diagnosis, it was like, okay, what's our family's experience going to be? How is this going to be challenging? But how are we going to thrive no matter what in the face of this? And I'm getting kind of emotional thinking about it because there were things that I had gone through, like I said, in my 20s that prepared me for this, which we may or may not get back to, but I just wanted to make a note of that. The other thing was you said dis-ease versus disease. That was it was an important thing in terms of how we used language and our mindset and how we related to the diagnosis. That was really important. And it wasn't that wasn't challenging at times, because there was plenty of times that you're just like, feeling defeated, like can't do anything about it. The progression of Parkinson's-like symptoms can really get you in touch with how little control we have over life. And we can get into that. But there was another part of your question, Marci, that I was hoping you would just say again. There was how you framed it, how you related to it, but there was something else.
Well, so I was asking, it's like, so when you first became aware, when did you first become aware of your parents' diagnosis, quotation marks there, and what was the time frame between the two being diagnosed? And then how did you feel? How did it make you feel when you heard the diagnosis? And then there's more here for us to go into, because I would really like to hear if at any point during this, did you focus inwardly, and did you ever feel like you were kind of alone and kind of out of control, and you really had that choice? It's like, am I going to push through this, or am I going to break down and let my parents down?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot right there.
Well, and I also want to say too, there's a lot of self-care available in allowing yourself to break down, to break through.
Yes.
So there's a lot of self-care that's in the breakdown, and there's also a lot of self-care that's available in the willingness to break through. So we can come back to that. I first discovered that my father had something going on in the summer of 2012. I was at a family friend's 50th birthday kind of party extravaganza on Martha's Vineyard, and Martha's Vineyard is like a nationally known place, right? Because the presidential vacations happen there sometimes. And so like it's a beautiful space. There's lots of people, lots of things happening. And we were just having a good time at this party. And my dad went outside to go put something down, and he kind of lost balance and fell. And I, I'd never quite seen him fall that way. And he's like, I don't know what happened. I just lost my balance. And, of course I helped him get up as quickly as possible, and we got some ice on his legs. But like, I kind of could tell that his balance something had changed. I didn't know what it was. And it was at that end of May, I think it was Memorial Day. of 2012 that I knew something had changed before him having a diagnosis. That's when I knew that I needed to watch out for him, because I had a feeling that he couldn't quite tell what was going on for him. So he was leaving the party, and this was a big important shift. Was he said, "Oh, I can walk back." It was like a half a mile or a mile away to where he was staying. Something inside me told me, get the car, drive him home, even if he doesn't want to be driven home. And that's when I knew something had changed. It was at that party. It wasn't until later in the summer or even in the middle of the fall that we finally went into the medical system, got a clear diagnosis from a neurologist who provided a lot of support and tools for us to work with. And later on, I would find out that his primary care doctor in February, the winter before that birthday party, had been asking him questions related to his neurological health that I didn't know about. So it's like, it's a big plug for, if possible, go to medical appointments together, or at least learn, what people are talking about with their doctors, because it's something that, as we started to take care of him as a family, what's the first thing we did? And, Dr. Dondi Nettles will be so happy about this. We went to the chiropractor. We went to a family chiropractor, because we knew that no matter what, whether there was a diagnosis or not, if his balance and his ability to move his body easily, we needed to take care of his neurological health, and the best way we knew possible was chiropractic care. So we went to the family chiropractor probably 2 to 3 times a week. And I still go after that summer, like every week, but we were going 2 to 3 times a week, because we knew that that was going to be the thing that would support him the most. My mom and I were very, very involved in his caregiving of him. And in the midst of that, there was a series of falls. There was a fall that was so bad that he had to go into rehab. And from rehab, he really had a choice to move into, 1-floor handicap accessible house, or move into assisted living. He chose senior living. He asked for it, because I think he knew that it would take care of us and the family on a deeper level. And then in the midst of my father living in senior living and assisted living, where he was getting a lot of support physically from multiple staff and aides, my mom started to lose sleep at night. She started to get insomnia in the winter of 2015 to 2016. And she and I decided to live together after we helped my dad moved into assisted living. We were kind of like, housemates and family. And it was really great. She and I, again, closeness in the relationship was allowed us to do that. So we started to notice that she was having unexplainable insomnia, kind of like no matter what she did, she couldn't, go to sleep. And we tried lots of things. But when we said, oh, I wonder if this is Parkinson's, I don't remember exactly how the question of whether or not it might be connected. However, when we went back to the neurologist who was helping my father, the medicine for Parkinson's called Sinemet that we were using, it worked. And I'm not saying this to say that people should go use this medicine or not. Like, I'm not a health professional. It's just that it helped her sleep. So it was like, okay, great. What's going on here? Oh, there's a dopamine deficiency that's showing up in her body that's very different than my father, who was losing his balance and his blood pressure was going down in unexplainable ways. So I'm saying this all, Marci, because Parkinson's shows up. The Parkinson's symptoms show up in different people's bodies in different ways. And neurologists who I've spoken to give the diagnosis, and it includes a lot of different kinds of experience. It's not like you broke a bone. There's something about dopamine deficiency in our bodies and our brains that show up in different people's nervous systems in different ways, right?
Yeah.
So I think the thing that you were kind of asking about is the feelings of loneliness in being my mother's youngest, who was living in the same area as her, and my father's only child, whether or not we do have a lot of friends and family that supported us through this process, but when you're the only and the youngest and you're living with them and you're up at 3 in the morning helping my father get up from a fall, or up at 3 in the morning trying to help my mom get to sleep, that experience of loneliness is unlike any feeling of loneliness I've ever felt in my life. It's like so deeply alone. It's not like it's just the things that happened at 2 and 3 in the morning in the midst of all those challenges are like I had to decide to leave my job to take care of my dad the next day in 2013 at 2 or 3 in the morning. I had to make that call because I knew that the next day he would need a level of medical and physical attention that I was the one available to provide that. And, for my mom, um, you can have the best intentions as a parent. When you deal with symptoms of Parkinson's, it can sometimes be very disorienting to your ability to think clearly sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And so very much like with my father, when we were at that party, where I could see his balance being less stable than it actually was, and I could see the impact, the negative effect that the sleeplessness was having on my mom's health and well-being. Because when you have insomnia and you're sleepless, your brain doesn't function properly. So there was things that I had to do to kind of take charge of her physical care and my father's physical care, and the stepping into that place of being at the time, what I thought was a caregiver, but was actually a care partner,
That's good.
because there was a experience of partnership that we had developed before the challenges, before the diagnosis, before the falls, before the sleeplessness. But I didn't feel it until I started using that name. So language is very powerful in this process.
You know what? Not just for you, but I bet that it was very powerful for your parents as well. Because when you're using the term caregiver, that means that they're not capable of caring for themselves. But care partner means that, hey, there are things I can do.
Yep.
And I'm going to do them. Right.
Yeah.
And I just think that this whole progression, it's fascinating to me. First of all, it's fascinating to me that both of your parents experience Parkinson's symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Because is that uncommon?
There's a bigger picture conversation that we could have about the state of our environmental and physical health in the world right now, which may give us some helpful information here. There's also kind of like the emotional, spiritual side of my parents had been in business together as family therapists and coaches and consultants for over 40 years. So they had this might just sound kind of strange and metaphorical, but they always went through things together. So, and there's more research being done on inflammation and gut health now, and the connection it has to the dopamine, the dopamine cells in the brain. My mom experienced, and again, this is not like a tested theory, it's just that she experienced so much stress at 3 in the morning when my father needed help.
Yes.
That stress, I believe, had an effect on her nervous system, so that certain things that she was dealing with, she may have become more vulnerable to that. The thing with Parkinson's is that, and this was a point I was making earlier, it's such a broad diagnosis that includes so many different kinds of symptoms. So I'll give you an example. My father dealt with balance issues. He dealt with fluctuating blood pressure, which would drop unexpectedly, which is how he actually fell down those stairs that got him into senior living. So there's the physical pieces of it. And then my mom dealt with the sleeplessness, and she dealt with some restlessness in her legs, and there's symptoms of constipation that come from your muscles and your nervous system not being able to work as well and activate the way that they may have used to. So there's a lot of different symptoms. So when I say my mom has a very different kind of Parkinson's than my dad, because my dad lost his ability to use a lot of his physical body pretty quickly over the course of a period of 2 years. My mom, since her diagnosis, she uses a walker, and in a lot of ways, she has become stronger. In like, if you look at her workout and the way she uses the walker, her level of energy, vitality, we have a holistic program of health and well-being that includes things like movement and activation and all sorts of healthy eating and healthy mindset and heart-based gratitude groups that we do. And there's a lot of pieces of this puzzle in terms of how to take care of your well-being. So I say all that because that is part of the bigger picture. And they have Parkinson's, they've been diagnosed with such, and they have two very different sets of symptoms. My father experienced a lot of the tremors that you see sometimes in his hand. My mom experiences that in her legs.
Oh, interesting.
So when people say Parkinson's, I don't think that any one experience of Parkinson's is exactly the same, which is a huge lesson for how we relate to health and well-being, because what one person needs for their health is very different than what another person needs. And both of the sets of symptoms are correlated and associated with deficiency in dopamine, which could be connected to a whole series of toxicity in our environment. It could be connected to the concussions that my father had when he was playing, football in college. You look at what happened with Muhammad Ali, you look at what happened with a lot of people who've experienced Parkinson's. There's a correlation between the concussions and the Parkinson's and how it affects the brain. We don't know about what, was in the dental work that happened, in terms of metals. There's a lot of different potential things in our environment that affects the nervous system and our body's ability to produce and regenerate dopamine. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's no one thing. It has to be a system of things.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things that we're learning in our world right now, is how to think through the system of things, not just, both parents with Parkinson's. Well, two very different sets of Parkinson's, and given how much they shared in their life and how much they did together in kind of a spiritual, emotional context, it's like, if they're both going to have a diagnosis, it makes sense that my parents would have had the same one.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it's just intriguing. It's intriguing to me.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that there are self-care procedures or self-care things that you can do when you're in a breakdown, and ones that you can do in a breakthrough. Can you share an example of what you did when you were in a breakdown situation for self-care? What's something that you personally have done to help yourself?
Well, this is such a good question, because one of the things that, I was talking about the stress that my mom went through when my dad was sleepless, and he was dealing with different sets of symptoms when he was at home in the night. When my mom fell and broke her femur from a very different set of circumstances, and I was her primary caregiver, care partner, the level of stress that people who are in those caregiving, those kinds of partnering situations can experience, can trigger enormous depression. And after 7 years of doing so much work to help care for my parents, in the summer of 2019, I did experience a severe set of what you could call depression, being on the sofa, not being able to get up, panic and anxiety attacks where you have the butterflies that go all through your system for a number of hours that keep you from going to work, really do make it so you need to stay home in a safe space where you're not driving. These are things that in terms of taking care of your mental health as someone who is providing care for other people, that breakdown, those period of weeks and months in the summer of 2019. Also, I do a really good job at taking care of my mental health. I have had the experience of being diagnosed with bipolar back in 2007. So I have done an amazing job taking care of my mental health and creating an experience of mental well-being. And this was not like anything I had experienced before. So I can tell you the connection between the stress of caregiving and partnering becomes difficult when your own health breaks down and you're on the sofa, unable to go to work, barely able to interact with a lot of people. The thing that made the biggest difference was the friends and family, the relationships that I had built with my uncle, my godmother, my life partner, my best friends, who brought food to the house when I could not leave and feed myself. The people who were willing to talk to me on the phone when all I could do was lie on my back on the sofa for hours at a time because I was so exhausted by the burnout. And the burnout that can be at the heart of breakdown is also an invitation to stop and really think deeply about how do we take care of ourselves. But it's not like, oh, you're burnt out, you're depressed, you're having anxiety attacks, you're on the sofa. Oh, go to a yoga class. That's such an inappropriate form of self-care for so many people who are dealing with that, because it doesn't address where you are in the moment. Now, some people might do yoga visualize. I visualized swimming. I visualized the things that made me feel good when I was lying there. I visualized my spiritual practices, even though I wasn't able to get up and meditate. I imagined myself meditating. I imagined myself, praying. I was able to imagine myself, because when you're so physically exhausted that you can't do any of the things, if you have enough energy to visualize and imagine something that makes you feel good, even if it's just for 5 minutes, and you're able to call a friend who you know cares about you and loves you unconditionally and tell them how hard it is and have a safe space to share your challenges, that is like the life raft, right? To grab onto is the friendships, the relationships, that faith in yourself, the connection to God, the prayers that you can say even for 5 minutes in your mind when you don't have the energy to get up and go to church or pray the way you might normally. That's what I had to get in touch with on the sofa in the midst of that breakdown and that depression.
That is amazing and so practical. Oh my goodness. Being able to recognize that reaching out to someone that truly loves you, it's like the doorway, right? It's like opening up that door for fresh air, and then being able to take the time and take a look inside of you to those things that you just love and enjoy yourself and just visualize that. I love that. That in itself is just a gold nugget for everybody, actually, for everyone, because you don't have to wait until you've gotten to a breakdown situation to where you can't get up off the couch. If you feel yourself going down that way, take that 5 minutes and start doing some positive visualization. Call out to a friend. I mean, especially nowadays, guys. You are never alone. There is always someone that wants to hear from you, and there is always someone that needs to hear from you. So yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Noah. That was amazing. So go ahead.
There's one other thing. So the thing that makes that possible is that before the breakdowns, that you're planting the seeds of grateful relationships. So there were people who called me during that time of breakdown. As soon as one of my friends told another one of my friends, I did not have the energy to call more than 3 or 4 people. And it's so important that we have relationships, especially during these times in our human history and our evolution, where we are being tested it's like our human species is going through like another level of testing, another level of initiation here. And when we're being tested, either in our personal lives or as a society and as a world, we need to plant the seeds of gratitude and the I trust yous and the I love yous and I support yous and the I miss yous and I'll be there for you if something difficult happens. That's what I learned from my parents over those 20, 30 years leading up to that, how important it was. This is what I learned in Colorado at the spiritual retreats, is to tell people you love them, tell people you care about them, tell them that you forgive them if something challenging happens. Those things are the seeds that you plant in your social garden of people that you care about before these things happen, so that you can have the resilient relationships to call on in times of need. If we don't say I love you during the good times, it's much more difficult to get in touch with that during the hard times.
Amen. Amen. That is so good. It's that digging the well before you're thirsty, or having, developed the relationships before you need the relationships. That is powerful, Noah. Thank you so much. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's so good. So what is one thing that you wish that you could go back and share with yourself before the opportunity that has come up for you to be your parents' care partners? What would you say to yourself if you knew what you know now? What would you say to yourself before Memorial Day 2012, when you first recognized that there was something going on with your father?
It's okay to go beyond being positive or negative. And a lot of people use the word like authentic, be real. One of the forms of self-care and survival, it's mixed. Self-care and survival can be mixed sometimes. I always, for most of these years, put more of a positive spin on what was going on, particularly to people who I wasn't super close with. So like, oh, I heard your father's in assisted living. Oh, he's in the best assisted living. I heard your mother's having health challenges. Yeah, but she's put together a great medical team. But there needs to be a space, and I wish I had been able to give this advice to myself back in 2010, 2011, where it's like, okay, and this is what I think is a really powerful gratitude practice, or even you hear this a lot practiced with people who use practices like tapping, where it's like, this may really suck right now, and I'm grateful to have the ability and the resources to get my dad into senior living. Or it might be terrifying that my mom is losing sleep unexplainably, and I'm thankful that we have a safe home to be sleepless in.
Yes.
So I think there's a way in which I wished that I had been more balanced in the way I thought about and expressed to other people what I was going through during the time of going through it. But I would really, in the personal development and like sales world that I grew up in, it's like, the whole thing around like fake it till you make it,
Oh gosh.
like fake it till you make it, fake it till you feel it. There's plenty of times where I would write gratitude cards to the staff at the senior living communities, because they had this wonderful program at the Benchmark Senior Living where my dad lived called Gratitude Grams, where you could fill out and like nominate a staff member who had helped your family member. I love that practice. But I also wish that there had been a card, and I did do some of this, but not enough. Like, I wish that there was a card that said, this is what I'm not grateful for about this whole situation. And I'm grateful for this, but making room for the ungratefulness that creates the health and the space to be grateful. And this is a lot of what my kind of work and my movement around discovering gratitude is about, is making room for all of our life experience.
Yeah.
And I wish that I had been able to tell myself, you're going to go through the most challenging time of your life. Make room for all of the experiences, because the gifts that God has in store for you are not going to come from things that always feel good or positive or happy. They can come from the deepest sorrow, pain, and sadness and loneliness, like we were talking about. To have someone have said, this is going to be really painful, and it's also going to be a really prosperous time at the same time, and you're not going to know what painful thing is going to lead to what good thing, or what good thing might turn challenging or bad, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, when you get deeper into spiritual and religious practices and like having faith in yourself, you realize that you can have your judgments of what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. And then there's the breath. And then there's the opportunity to realize, okay, whew, breathe. I'm still alive. I wish that someone had told me to take more time to breathe.
Hmm.
The thing with dealing with emergencies, like parents falling and having to go to the emergency room, is that sometimes everything, even like a nice sunny day, if you and I were taking a walk by the lake and going to the pool, your body is so shook up from the times you had to respond to the falls and the ambulances and the first alerts that it's hard to calm the nervous system down. So like I would have wished that someone had said, like, go to the chiropractor every day if you need to, you know, like I know that that's sometimes not always affordable or possible for everybody, but the chiropractor just represents, do something just for you. And sometimes, Marci, what that looks like is when you're in the emergency room taking care of your parents, you go into the bathroom and you look in the mirror and say, you know, things are really challenging right now, but I love you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like things really suck right now, but
Yeah.
I believe in you.
Yes. Yes.
We will make it through this. You know,
Yes.
just yes, that vote of confidence in those difficult times goes so far. I love that that is what you would go back and tell yourself, because I think that so many of the people that are listening right now, myself included, that is a great lesson for us to take that moment and to feel what we're feeling in the moment, recognize it. We need to be real with ourselves sometimes, you know, that we can't fake ourselves out, you know. And if you're sitting there and saying that, oh, everything's just great, when you know inside what your experience is not, all you're doing is becoming the liar to yourself. And there's no one else worse to become a liar to than to yourself, because then you start doubting everything. So I love that you would actually go and be real with yourself. This is really hard, but that's okay. I love you. We're going to do this. We can make it through this.
Mm.
Perfect there. So I know that you lost your dad in 2017, right? That he graduated in
Yeah.
2017.
Yeah. He moved on. The way he liked to talk about it is you know, he's from the Buddhist tradition. So he transitions to whatever is next. There's a cycle of life, rebirth, and death that goes on in the Buddhist faith around, you know, each incarnation and reincarnation. Um, so yeah, he moved into whatever, you know, some people, you know, in the Christian faith would say he went to heaven.
Mhm.
Um, you know, there's lots of different ways to think about it, but I believe that he's still with us in spirit, because there's lots of different ways I could explain that. And it doesn't get rid of the missing. And this is kind of goes back to what we were talking about. It's like missing holding his hand or praying with him in person. Um, it doesn't go away. So to give yourself permission to feel that and have faith, to feel whatever you're feeling and still have faith, and to say, it's okay to have both the feelings and the faith, and constantly invite yourself to feel the difficult feelings, let it out, feel it, and have the faith, feel it and have the faith, feel it and have the faith. I think that's what he taught me, particularly when he was in hospice in those final years. I mean, he was in the bed one day and he was just quiet, because as someone is getting ready to, you know, the end of their life, sometimes when they're dealing with some of the symptoms he had, it's like he'd just get more quiet, whisper, you know, he'd blink, he'd hold my hands, yes or no. And there was one time that we were sitting with him and we were having dinner. We had brought like a picnic into his room, and my best friend and my mom and I were sitting with him, and we were talking about our day. Like you and I would be like, oh, what did you do today? Oh, how was that meeting at work? Or, how's your kid? Or like just kind of catching up on the day. And we're doing this right by his bed. We're all surrounding his bed. And he's so quiet. He's like almost like a mummy. And then all of a sudden he like sits up in bed, which is really challenging for him to do at the time, or so we thought. He opens his eyes and he said, would you be quiet? And he may have even said like, shut up. Like it was just that it was like, be quiet. And then he went right back into being quiet himself. And we realized how important it was to be quiet and still with him in that sacred time of getting ready to make that transition.
Yes. Yes, that's beautiful. I love it. I love that you were all sitting there around his bed with him. And so that kind of moves me into, because it's just, I think about when my mom passed away and having that gratitude of being able to be there with her. Um, uh, it's all about the gratitude. And I would really love for you to share, Noah, what you're doing now to spread that love and that hope and the gratitude and encouragement to the world. What is your mission?
Yeah. Well, my mission is that each and every one of us discovers what we're grateful for about ourselves and can leave a legacy of unconditional love on the planet, and unconditional love of yourself.
That's not
The
always easy.
No, the kind of love that goes on forever.
Yeah.
And I learned what forever, or I should say, I've started to learn what forever has meant to me by having a spiritual relationship with my father, once he left his body. And I think that the important thing I want to share about what I call the Discover Gratitude movement, particularly at a time when I feel super grateful for, even though my father left his body much earlier than I expected he would, even though I didn't get to do the hikes and the climbs and the adventures that I thought I would get to do with him in his 70s, 80s, and 90s, even though all of that, I am grateful that he was able to come to the completion of his life at a time, and I think this is relevant, when I was able to be by his bedside relatively easily. And so one of the things that I'm teaching inside of our gratitude groups, and we practice gratitude meditation, we talk about appreciative inquiry, which is a generative discussion process that we have both on a daily basis, and also a couple of times a month we do workshops on how do you create new possibilities in your life and fulfill your dreams coming from a place of gratitude, and get in touch with those dreams that you may have lost from a place of gratitude. We do that through a group discussion and meditation and journaling process. And we look at how we can take more deeper kinds of care for ourselves. Caring for ourselves can also be caring for another, because caring for another can sometimes take care of ourselves. So it's not just about sitting in the bubble bath, and bubble baths are really important. They are not just a luxury, but they can be the thing that kept me sane during those times that we talked about. Getting in water is so important. So in the gratitude groups, we talk about what can you do to express your gratitude to yourself. You fill your gratitude well so you can share your gratitude with others. And in sharing your gratitude with others, you also feel the gratitude come back to you. So we have daily groups, we have monthly workshops, we have a Facebook group now that's over 1,000 members strong, which is really, really exciting, because there's people all over the world sharing their gratitude for each other and for themselves in that space. But the thing I wanted to say, which I wasn't expecting to share today, is that the gratitude I feel for having been by my father's bedside, if he and I were not able to be together in person. And I know that there's a lot of families and a lot of people who've had to put hands on glass windows.
Yes.
There has been There's been plenty of, organizations and institutions that may not have been run as well as my father's facility was. And even if it was being run really well, we wouldn't have had the in-person access, during the last few years of the pandemic. I want to encourage us to remember, by putting our hands on our hearts and giving thanks for ourselves, we can also give thanks for the parts of ourselves that come from the people we love. So that being said, when I think about my father, I sometimes look at my hands and remember that these hands were made as a result of God's work, but also as a result of what him and my mom did when they came together.
Right.
That he is here. He's in my heart. He lives on in me. And having that memory, whether he's passed on or transitioned, or if he were, let's say, in another part of the country or the other part of the world right now, physically alive, it's important to share this with you, because there was times when, before he physically beamed up, he and I, when he was in assisted living, I would not always be able to see him depending on the workday, or be able to talk to him because he wasn't able to talk on the phone. So I got these prayer beads, which is a traditional Tibetan mala, where you pray and you say a prayer as you go around. And I got him the same prayer beads. And I said, Dad, I want you to have these so that when you think of me, you can say a prayer. And when I think of you, you can say a prayer, and we can always be connected. This is when he was alive. Even if we can't talk on the phone, even if I can't come to visit you that day, find ways to connect with the people you love. And remember that connecting with them, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, also keeps you connected to the part of yourself that you're grateful for. I might see, oh my God, I'm so grateful for how well Marci takes care of herself and she inspires other people to do the same thing. That recognition of you, Marci, is also a recognition that I too can take good care of myself, and I do, and I inspire other people to do the same. So as you think of the people that you love that may not be with you, or you may not be able to physically have access to for whatever reason, remember that what you love about them is also connected to something that you can love about yourself, and to stay connected to how they're always a part of you in giving thanks for them and remembering to give thanks for the part of you that relates to them. That is such a key gratitude practice and way of thinking and feeling.
It absolutely is. And that just leads us into the additional connection information that we need to know, Noah, because you have so much to give, so much love and knowledge. I mean, just the science of gratitude that you've shared with us previously, that I know that you share with other people. But how can people follow you? How can they connect with you? And what's your website? We need to know all the good stuff.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Marci. So probably the most fun way to connect, if you are on Facebook, is to join the public Discover Gratitude group. I think that's just such a wonderful way to stay connected in community, and come join Discover Gratitude, share what you're grateful for. It's so great to connect that way. I've made some amazing friends, mentors, new family, people I love, just by them joining that group. That's an amazing way to connect. You can always go to noahmcintyre.com. You can go to discovergratitude.org. Those are my two websites. And discovergratitude.org is for people who might not want to be connecting on Facebook, but it's like our own private community that's also free to join. We have free workshops, paid workshops on a regular basis that they can participate in at discovergratitude.org. And you can always contact me at noahmcintyre.com and come join our gratitude group. Discover Gratitude. Just type that in when you're on Facebook. We'd love to see you there. I think those are probably the simplest and easiest ways for people to participate on, a number of different places and levels. And
I love it. And I just have to say, from my own personal experience, the Facebook group is just a simple way you can hop in, you can hop out, you can spend as much time there as you can. Or if you've only got a minute, that suffices as well, because the information in there is just so uplifting, so full of gratitude. So, Noah, I just am putting my hand on my heart, and I am just so full of gratitude for you, my special friend, and for the information, and you being able to be vulnerable and sharing your story of caring for your parents. So, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode. You're caring for your parents with Parkinson's.
Mm.
What now? I'm dropping that disease part. So, because we don't like that.
Mm.
So thank you so much, Noah. We appreciate you. And I know that the audience has felt your heart and have connected in a whole new way, and maybe have a better understanding of how they too can do their own self-care in their breakdown moments. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Noah. You're
Mm.
amazing.
Thank you so much, Marci, and so are you. I feel the love and the support and the grace of this moment together. It's such an honor to be with you.
Thank you.